Perfect. And we're live. We can give people a couple minutes to pop in. And sorry, you guys might see my finger poke up every now and then because I do everything from my phone here. So, birthday celebrations. I got to hear what you were doing. Do you want to tell Ross what you're doing today, Wayne?
Oh, well, it's quite lovely. I am not a birthday person by nature. I think, making it around the sun is not a particularly impressive feat, right? Millions of people do it. But because it's kind of a milestone, my bride is taking me to a really nice brand new resort here in Las Vegas where we don't have to worry about the dog or drinking, driving after beverages, and going to my favorite local restaurant and like that. So it's going to be quite lovely.
It's going to be a lot of fun. You get to have some spoiled time. How about you, Ross? You just celebrated your birthday on the 14th of July.
I did, yes. It was, how old am I now? Yeah, 39. So, it was good.
You had to think about that?
I always have to think about it. Once I passed 30, everything was like, am I 30 again or is it 31?
And after a while, you just quit doing the math. The only thing it means is you have to keep scrolling down further when you're filling out internet forms.
Yeah.
I'm starting to wonder if that's why people just find an age that they like and they just keep every year. They're just turning 25. I'm turning 25. So that we never forget. Did you do anything fun or did you get good and spoiled?
I got loads of books as usual. And we just chilled out as a family. So that was quite nice.
You've got little girls, right?
Yeah, 2 little girls. One is about to be 11 and the other is about to be 7. So it's all good.
You've got your hands full. Those are nice ages.
Yeah. Well, my eldest is about to start secondary school.
Abandon hope, all ye who enter there. But yes.
So it's quite weird. And then the other day we kind of got her, we gave her one of our old phones and then gave her a kind of like a SIM card so she could have a phone. And now I get text by her, which is quite cool. But it's odd that now she has a mobile phone when she used to like fit in like my hand, like here. It's crazy. Tearing up.
Exactly. Well, Her Serene Highness is 28. And it doesn't stop. So
thanks for that, Wayne.
Just know.
I feel confident now.
Never ends.
It really doesn't.
Well, perfect. We do have a couple of people that are in here. I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure if it's just lagging or if comments haven't come in. But why don't we just go ahead with you guys introducing a little bit about yourselves and about your work? How about you? We start with you, Wayne, because you're right next to me here.
Okay. I am Wayne Turmel. I am actually a Canadian, although I live stateside. I live in the city of Las Vegas. I spent 20 years as a stand-up comic and then had to go be a grown-up person and get a big boy job. And now I do that. And I write both business books and, fiction to save what's left of my sanity.
Is there much left of it?
Oh, no. It's hanging by a shred. It's just...
That one last little thread hasn't released just yet.
I'm just the kitten hanging on the tree in the poster,
I was looking through your work and I've got a few of them that I popped onto my wish list because they sound really interesting. So I'm excited. And I was telling Wayne before we jumped on, I feel bad because I haven't read any of his work yet. I have read quite a bit of Ross's, but I've got it on my wish list and a lot of it sounds really good. So I'm excited to be able to jump into that. How about you, Ross?
Hello, I'm Ross Jeffery. I'm the author of Juniper Tome, or all of those. Juniper Tome, Only the Stains Remain, Tethered, Milk, Kisses and Other Stories. And I got a few other bits in the pipeline as well. And Tome was nominated for a Bram Stoker last year, which was amazing. And I know Wayne from Storgy Magazine. So if you're watching this, I'll put it in the chat. I can't put it in the chat, I don't think. But anyway, Storgy Magazine, head over there. Wayne's got some cracking short stories on there as well. And that's about it from me. And I'm a dad.
A dad, hardworking dad. I can put that into the description too as well, so people can find all of your guys' work, find Storgy and everything. So I'll make sure all of that is in there. And if I miss anything, just give me a good smack. Make sure I get it in
the
there.
Storgy verse is actually very cool. It's like the writers that convene there. There's kind of like this little core of humans who've connected and kind of stay in each other's orbits and support each other's work and whatever. It's quite lovely.
Well, that's really nice. I met Wayne through Ross, because Ross had tagged me or something or shout me out on Twitter, and he followed me, and I said thanks for the follow. And he's like, hey, any friend of Ross is a friend of mine. So
there we go.
See, it just keeps going. We get to meet everybody. We have Lewis that's popped into the chat here.
Hey,
how are you doing, Lewis? We have LJ. Thanks for coming in. It's exciting to have you guys here. And we have CJ here.
CJ, look at all these people. Lovely.
Yeah. We've got M that's popped in here. We have Andreas.
Hello,
you guys are popular.
Look at this. I feel special.
I'm just riding Ross's coattails today.
I know. Keep getting pulled back, Wayne.
Well, you listen. You're the big award winner, buddy. I'm just I'm just plugging along in obscurity.
I'm just an average Joe, me, Wayne. I'm just an average Joe. Yeah.
You know, it's really exciting though, as a reader and reviewer, to get to meet these authors, read their work, and watch them grow and become popular and famous. And I mean, you guys are already famous to me. Like I say, authors are my celebrities. So that's how I see you guys already.
Well, that's what happens when you live in Red Deer. There are places that have real celebrities. I'm just saying.
Not enough of them. Not enough of them. Or they hide. Or they're in the big cities like Toronto and stuff.
Yes.
I don't have any around me, I don't think. But I could be wrong. Maybe they're hiding.
Maybe use that big hammer behind you to find them.
That hammer that Lewis got me.
Ah.
Yeah, it's got Canadian flag stickers all over it. So I've got Thor's Mjolnir hammer. So I can, assemble the Canadians to buy all of your guys' books.
They use that to drive the last spike, I think.
Yes, they do. Authors do trump all of their celebrities, because I don't watch much TV or movies. Although we do have a true celebrity. I mean, Wayne did say he did a lot of stand-up comedians, so that's a huge name to have. Have we seen any of your stuff?
The only evidence that exists, because I did 99% of my work pre-internet, is if you go on, yes, I'm that old. If you go on Amazon, they have all the old episodes of Evening at the Improv. And I want to say like season 20, it was the last season. I did an Evening at the Improv that was taped in LA, and that's literally the only clip in existence on the web of me doing my little puppet show. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, then it's a clip worth searching for and finding and watching.
To Canadians will know what I'm talking about. I worked for Yuck Yucks for like 15 years and toured all the countries, did all that stuff. Yeah. That's what brought me to the States, so I could be a big star. And you can see how that's working.
It's working pretty dang well, I would say. I didn't know that. That's fantastic. I mean, and that's a long time to be working for Yuck Yucks.
In so many ways, yes.
Didn't get tired of them.
Oh, another life, another time.
La la. Nice things. Yeah. Well, perfect. That's exciting. Can I ask, did you guys always want, this is going to be a typical question you guys probably get asked all the time. Did you guys always want to write? Did you always want to be an author?
I always wanted to tell stories. I didn't know. I'm not very well educated, and I struggled at English. I didn't like reading, but I used to love playing with my toys and telling stories that way. And I used to love watching films. But to be an actual author and to write a book, I always thought it was kind of like above whatever I could ever achieve, because my English is atrocious, my spelling's rubbish. And then I found out that you can get editors to do that So I was like, excellent. But yeah, no, I think over the years I've gradually kind of, like, I went to university and studied film and had to write a lot of scripts and stuff like that, and kind of always just, I can tell stories, like orally tell them and everything like that, which is fine. And then I kind of started writing short stories and then kind of developed from there, really, and kind of got a grasp of it. I think I've got a grasp of it anyway. And then kind of stepped up to like a novella with Juniper and then onto a novel. And now I can't stop. Like, it's like a strange addiction, but a good one.
A good addiction.
Yeah.
You know, it's a healthy addiction, and it's a good way to output everything inside. And I mean, us readers, we're happy that you're doing it. So we'll just keep reading. So just keep plugging away. Yeah. Were you always attracted to dark? Like, are you only planning on doing, you know, like the darker types of reads, or would you jump into a different genre?
I kind of like dark and bleak. So it's cheery. But I also, like, you know, I love kind of Donald Ray Pollock and Charles Bukowski and kind of others outside of the horror sphere. Like, I love like Philip K. Dick as well, but I don't know if I'd ever write a science fiction book. But yeah, I can see myself writing something else, maybe like something gritty. And I guess it's just like I've written a lot of short stories this last year. Like, I've been writing with the Storgy guys. We've been writing a short story each week. And although many of mine are dark and depressive, they're not all horror based. So there is a bit of a mixture, which is nice. I guess just trying it out and see if it works. But, you know, Tethered that I wrote is not horror. It's kind of more literary. But yeah, I just love horror though. Like, it's always appealed to me as a kid, and I love kind of being scared, although it takes a lot now to get me scared. But there are some books that pop out, like Out Behind the Barn by Chad Lutzke and John Bowden, is it? That had me in tears, that one, which was good. But yeah, I just love dark fiction. It's a place where you can kind of face your fears as well from the comfort of your own chair. But yeah.
Well, and it's realistic because life isn't all fluffy and rainbows, and
no,
you know, there's a lot of real life, realistic horror, right? What about you, Wayne? Was writing always a calling for you?
I always had visions of it. I grew up in a town even smaller than Red Deer, and considerably more depressing. And like Ross, you know, I have like a 2-year associate's degree burning a hole in my pocket. But I always wanted to be a writer. I think that's what brought me to stand-up, was the idea of writing jokes and stuff. And I knew I must have been fairly obvious about it because my mother insisted in 10th grade that I take typing class. And I was the only boy in typing class because who would ever need to know how to type, right? And so yeah, I always wanted to be a writer, and I had visions of, you know, being Stephen King and whatever. And then the world kind of decided other things, and I wrote screenplays. I had a couple options; they never got made. I went out in the world, started writing business books and that kind of thing, and then wrote my first novel at 50, which was Count of the Sahara. And my first few novels were all historical fiction, and, you know, like that. And as a young person, I wrote some horror stuff. You know, Johnny Lycan, which is the new book, Johnny Lycan and the Anubis Disc, has horror elements in it. It's more urban fantasy. I mean, I like to think of it as Dresden Files without the Fae.
Okay.
Is kind of, because there will be no Fae in my work. I will have none of that. But I write kind of a little bit of everything. Even my work on Storgy, my short story work, there's a little bit of everything. Tony Self, blessings be upon him, seems to be a big fan of my short fiction, which is how I got sucked into the orbit. And a lot of them actually are stories about boxing.
Okay.
Which, if anybody's listening, by the way, I'm trying to put together a boxing anthology. So if you have short stories or are interested, let a brother know. But the boxing stories, actually, all my short fiction started as writing exercises.
Okay.
To see, can I do that in that short period of time? And the boxing stories actually are a really good way. They were a really good way for me to learn how to write a fight scene and how to write an action scene.
Okay.
So they were kind of experiments. And matter of fact, The Forger of Cairo, which is a story on Storgy from 2 years ago, that thing that I write about in the story is actually the MacGuffin in Johnny Lycan. It is the Anubis disc. So it's like it all comes together kind of somehow.
I like that. I have to say, you're smart to have gone into computer or typing class.
Well, it was typing class back then. I remember I wrote my first screenplay. I tell people that I wrote it on a Remington manual typewriter. What I did was write it on a Remington manual typewriter and a combination of mezcal and grapefruit juice. But yeah, I can still type on a typewriter. Darn it.
Well, that's a good skill to have, because that's what the whole world is now. Is just typing or texting or thumbing everything, right? So, do you guys have a book that you would, because you guys both have quite a few pieces out there, would you steer anybody into a certain direction to start first with your work?
You go first, Wayne.
Well, I think for purposes of this show, obviously, this skews a little dark and weird. So I would say that Johnny Lycan is the obvious place to start. Johnny is, he's a werewolf. He's a werewolf who thinks he's the weirdest thing in the universe. And as he develops his career as a private investigator, he learns that he's not. And it's pretty funny and amusing and all of that good stuff. Andreas, yes, Joyce Carol Oates did write a lot of boxing. What I'm looking to do with the anthology is actually do my own version of Rope Burns, which was FX Pools, and $1 Million Baby came out of that anthology. So yeah, I would start with Johnny Lycan, although there's a weird mix of humor and scary stuff in all of them. In Acra's Bastard, which is historical fiction set in the Crusades. It's the only thing I've ever written, including Johnny Lycan, that I got told I should have put a trigger warning in.
Really?
Well, here's the thing. Luca is this 10-year-old orphan during the Crusades, and he's forced out of his orphanage because one of the brothers tries to molest him, and this beta reader said, "Oh, you sick bastard, how can you do this? You didn't give us a trigger warning, and it triggered my PTSD." And there was the weird part of me, and Ross, you can identify with this. There's this weird thing where your first reaction is, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That was never my intent. I'm sorry that I did that." And then there's that part in the back of your brain that goes, "I must have written the snot out of that scene. I must have nailed it."
You did that, yeah. I've got a weird thought on the whole trigger warning things. I've kind of got that unpopular opinion. I'm not necessarily on board with all of it, but I understand why it's there. So I won't get into that because I'll probably get a lot of people mad at me.
Ross did. There's a trigger warning, I suppose, at the beginning of Only the Stains Remain. This is me proving I'm actually reading it. But I get it. Here's the other thing: one person's trigger warning is another person's cool.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes. Yeah. Or you can't possibly cover everybody's trigger warnings because everyone's going to be different, right? Something might spark them in a different way. So, but even in like reading Tome, you had that little message at the end there, right?
Yeah.
See if I
I was
find it.
toying with
Trigger warnings at the end are merely for the lawyers. Okay, they're not true trigger warnings.
Listen, I put something in there.
But yeah, no, with Tome, I think because I sent Tome out because it's quite heavy, it deals heavily with racism, and I sent it out to a few people of color to kind of read it and get back to me, and then they didn't have a problem with it, which was amazing because they said that's what the world's like. And then, but one of them came back and said, you might want to just state that you're not a racist. And I was like, okay. And then I was thinking, do I put that at the beginning? And I was just like, no, I'll stick it at the end. So they get all the way through it first and then realize.
As an old cishet white guy, I feel obliged sometime to let people know that the opinions of the characters are not necessarily those of the management.
Yeah, that's what I did, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't write about people in Chicago talking in the 1920s and sweep all that under the rug. You just can't do it. People talked a certain way. They believed a certain thing. And if you're going to be honest about it, you capture that. It doesn't mean you condone it or agree with it or that's your opinion. It's a character. And the end of that sentence is, it's a character, you idiot. Do you not know how books work?
That's right. And that's how I read it. I read it as these are the characters, especially when you're reading dark fiction or, like any type of darker story. You're looking for those things. Those are the things you're going to come across, right? So when I'm reading these characters, I'm not thinking, oh, Ross is racist, right? I'm thinking, these are the bleak, dark characters of some of the reality in the world, right? And he's bringing that forward, which is also a good underlining message, right? It would be totally different though if Ross was on Twitter, just saying these nasty things coming out of his own mouth. Then I'd be like, listen, that's a total different story.
I don't know. He's awfully convincing. I'm just saying. He seems to know that stuff. I'm just.
Yeah.
Lewis says, get him on the show. He'll say what needs to be said.
Yeah, I'm sure he will.
Hey, Juicy, how are you?
What was I going to say? Wayne, the Anubis disc book, are you doing another one?
I am. I confess to being a victim of the pandemic, and not for a reason that most people would accept. I am working on the second Johnny Lycan book. I absolutely am. I'm about 2/3 of the way through. The problem is that unlike most people whose businesses went in the pot during the pandemic, our business, the Remote Leadership Institute, boomed because we teach people how to work remotely. And the business books, Long Distance Leader and Long Distance Teammate, have been doing so well and driving so much business that, and I write 1,000 words a week for the blog. It's not leaving me a lot of mental bandwidth, which I understand is a bad excuse. And it's legit. It's like I've just got very little left in the tank and I'm writing on fumes sometimes. But I am, blessings upon you for asking, I am working on it. And it's fun because Johnny is being sent to Las Vegas.
So you're doing a recce now.
Well, it's fun because when we moved here from Chicago, one of the things people liked about Johnny Lycan is that it catches Chicago. It's people that live in Chicago get it instantly. They get it. Johnny's a very Chicago person. And people who come from other parts of the country to Las Vegas have a visceral reaction one way or the other. This is a very weird town, and people either embrace it or they hate it. And Johnny is not a fan. So I get to write all the snarky stuff about Las Vegas that I mutter under my breath. I get to let somebody actually say. So it's
somebody else say it and take the fall for it.
Exactly. Again, it's not my opinion. It's him.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you for asking, because when you write a book and then when I was a comedian, you kind of got instant gratification, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you write a book, somebody, and I wish it was me, described it as you tell a joke and then you wait a year and a half for the laugh.
Mm-hmm. There it is. There's the laugh.
So to know that somebody cares is really nice.
Oh, that's good.
Well, let's try. And you know what? That's why I have so much respect for you guys, because you have your own jobs, your own families, things going on around you. And then you're also trying to sit down and take that time to write and publish and edit. And it's a lot of work. So, I mean, us readers might be poking you all the time. Hey, have you finished that yet? But really, we're calm. At least I'm calm. I guess I can't speak for everybody. And I will sit and wait as long as I have to for the next book.
No, I think that's an important thing. And you know, Ross, I mean, you've got your little Storgy crew, Tony and Tomic and all those folks. Accountability is important. I have a very weird little group of humans that we read each other's work every Thursday night and kick each other in the butt when we need to be kicked. And that kind of accountability is important.
Hmm.
We do that as readers too. We have what we call buddy reads. It really pushes us to actually read that book that we've been waiting to read forever and to stay on it. Not the same as authors. Read now, sleep later. Thank you for coming in. She says, I mean, I appreciate trigger warnings. Unfortunately, I'm not always in a good place to read content that explicit things that I've actually gone through myself. So I'm reading on a really small screen. I'm not going to cancel a book, though, if I can't handle the content at that time. People get this persona of, oh, that's taboo. It shouldn't exist in media. I guess the way I see trigger warnings, and I won't go too much into it because I don't want to drag on that conversation now that we've kind of moved on, is me personally as a reader, I can understand why we need trigger warnings because I understand there are people out there that are, you know, that there's certain content does bother them. Me personally, I don't have that. I have a few areas where I'm a little more sensitive. But I can usually get through that, no problem. Or if I can't, then I just simply put the book down. Like you said, I don't cancel the book or anything. But I think the way I see it is if we have content warnings on books, it's impossible to put every single content warning that's inside, especially a horror book, on the back. Some people
we put content warnings on movies. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, you wouldn't take your kid to, or most people wouldn't take their kid to an R-rated movie.
No.
Right? There are things in there that they aren't ready to see. You don't want them to see, whatever it is. Right? And it's the same thing. I mean, if you buy a book from the horror section and things are bloody and icky and things that are bloody and icky bother you, not a great choice.
Don't read it.
Right?
Exactly.
If you know in advance that this is bloody and icky, then all bets are off, right? You can't complain that it's bloody and icky. It was right there.
Yeah. Well, and that's the way I see it. Read the synopsis, you know, maybe look at a couple of reviews. I guess what I'm trying to say is us as readers, we need to hold ourselves accountable for what we're reading. We can't just put it all on authors and the publishers to give us content warnings. We need to do our due diligence to read the synopsis, get a feel of what the story is going to be out. Look at the genre, really think if that's the genre we should be reading in. Maybe check out some, you know, non-spoiler reviews and see what people are saying to kind of see, you know, to gauge if we think that's something for us. Because there may be somebody out there that's triggered by simply a little bit of blood or even like a needle. Some people get, you know, really queasy over a needle. I mean, if we had that list, there's blood in here, there's needles in here, there's drugs, there's alcohol, there's abuse, there's rape. Like
and that's just Ross's first chapter.
Yeah, that's just my first chapter. Yeah.
It would be never ended, right? And you can't possibly cover every single trigger warning that's in there. So I just feel that us readers, we really need to do a bit of our due diligence to pick up what we think is good for us. And
you know what, though? Here's the thing. I think that synopses and really honest things are just good business, right? Why would you, for example, my first novel, Count of the Sahara, is a real character piece, and it was pretty ambitious for a first novel, and the reviews are all over the board. I mean, I've got 190 reviews, and most of them are good, thank goodness. But there are some bad reviews, and if you read the reviews, almost all of them were, "This book isn't what I thought it was." You know, people were looking for an Indiana Jones kind of rollicking thing. And that's not what this book is. And that's legit, right? If this isn't what you thought it was, then your opinion is perfectly valid. And somebody else who's looking for that is going to go, no, that's not the book for me. So, you know, this is a business. You got to try to get people to read your books, and you want people to enjoy them.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody's not going to enjoy it, I'm not going to force them to sit down and read it.
No, exactly. No, you're okay. I hope it kind of warms. No, you're good. It's like I said, we won't go on into it. Just it's a heavy topic in the book world right now, right? Because it's, some of us think, you know, it's going to take away some of the juice of the book, some of the guts of the book. If we have so many trigger warnings, you're going to get a real good idea of what you're about to step into. When some of us like to have that unexplained, unknown territory, but at the same time, I understand why it's needed. And I as a mother, I appreciate it on TV shows or movies, because even some Disney shows now, there's adult jokes and there's swearing in Disney movies. It's things that I don't necessarily want my 4-year-old to hear. My older kid, it's not a big deal because he knows, right? But if I sit down and I'm watching a movie with my kids that I think is appropriate based on its rating, and something happens on screen, it's not that, you know, once they've seen it, they've seen it. It's not like you can stop it quick enough, right? Whereas I'm not going to go out and buy a bunch of these. I'm not going to go out and buy Only the Stains Remain for my 11-year-old to read.
Why not? Why not?
You would traumatize my son. I mean,
I probably would. Yeah, don't give it to him.
Hey, can I ask Ross a question?
Yeah.
That Only the Stains. There's a great line in there, and I'm dying to know if this is an old adage that I haven't heard, or this came from your brain. It's talking about God loved birds, so he made trees. Man loved birds, so he made cages.
I'll tell you where that came from. My wife's granddad was in the war, and he kept lots of journals and everything about when he was like in the front line World War II, Coldstream Guard, and he had all these journals with like he'd written in pencil, and there was one in there where he was talking about eating this orange thing for the first time. He didn't know what it was, and it ended up being an orange. But they'd never seen them before, and he was talking about like the skin of it and how it smelt and all that. And then we found like a box of his old kind of like little things that he'd written down over the years, and it was in there, and I kind of stole it. So
it's not plagiarism; it's an homage.
It's an homage, yeah. And
Exactly.
you know, he's no longer with us, unfortunately. So he lives on in my book.
It's just such a great line. And
yeah, it's brilliant. And I don't even know if he stole that off of somebody, because he did come up with lots of like classics. But yeah, I loved it so much, and it summed up that piece when I needed it. It was just the right thing.
It does, and it, you know, because people ask me sometimes why I read certain genres or certain whatever, and you know, isn't that beneath you? Or and I make a joke that when I read horror or I read urban fantasy, you know, I call them jelly beans. It's like sometimes you just want jelly beans, and then sometimes you want a meal. But it doesn't mean that there isn't really good writing and really cool stuff in genre.
Yeah. I think like with all my work, I try to make it as kind of, I don't know, I really like, I think Well Read Beard called it purple prose the other day when he was talking to somebody about it. And it's kind of really, I don't know, you know, like I call it prose magic, but you know, kind of just
Flowery,
really,
descriptive.
Yeah, attractive writing that's really beautiful to read. Like I love adding that to my work, and I'll continue to do it. I don't even know what purple prose is, so who cares? But I just love writing really detailed, attractive kind of stuff, and the word choices that I use to kind of make it like lyrical or lyricism in it. Like I just love it, and I love reading books like that as well. Like Chad Lutsky does it loads in his work, and yeah, I just love kind of making horror beautiful, because you know sometimes it is, and sometimes it needs. It doesn't have to always be dark and dreary and horrible. Like you can have beautiful words written in it. But yeah. Sorry, get off my soapbox.
No, it's okay.
No. It's great. I mean, that's people that read genre understand that there is a lot of really good writing that's done in genre.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, when I was writing historical fiction, I loved it, and you could do certain things with the language and things in historical fiction, maybe that you can't do in a story about a werewolf detective in Chicago. On the other hand, there are things I can do, like swear properly and use certain analogies that I can do in, this silly werewolf detective novel that I couldn't do in another genre or in another way.
Yeah.
And there's wonderful writing in all of the above. I mean, you look at Clive Barker or some of those things. Some of that work will stand up Neil Gaiman. I mean, some of that work will stand up against anybody, whether they call it literary or not.
Oh yes. Absolutely.
I mean, some of it is just jelly beans, and that's okay too. But there's some really good writing hiding under there.
Yeah, I think it's when you get
absolutely.
someone that reads something quite off, like, it's like a sci-fi person that wants to come and read something else. They're like, oh, but that's going to be like this. And I don't, I like how sci-fi is. And I think, horror, like a lot of people look down on horror as like a poor man's kind of genre. Like, it's like, actually, have you read anything? That is it. Like, there are some that aren't good, like more kind of like 80s stuff. But like, I think times have changed. And I think as well, like with indie writing, you've got some amazing talent, like just think like Laurel Hightower and Gemma Moore and people like that, and like Sonora
like Ross Jeffery.
Yeah, he's all right.
Or Wayne Turmel.
Wayne.
I don't mind riding his coattails, but at least admit that I'm here for corn's sake.
No, you have to wait for
Wayne.
it. I couldn't do it all in once.
And the best of the bunch is Wayne Turmel, and but like there's loads of that that's undiscovered because like publishers want to like have a bankable writer and want to kind of do it. And things are changing, like V Castro's just signed a deal, and
look at Eric LaRocca. He started and boom, he's just he's blown up. Yeah. It's just there's so many that are kind of like now starting to get a footing, but for so many years it's been like Stephen King, Dean Koontz, and that's like that's like all they're interested in. And but now I think like most of the books I recommend that are horror to people that kind of either say to me what book would you recommend, or something is normally like an indie title that I'll give them, because although I do read some of the bigger books from bigger publishers, like most of the groundwork is in this kind of like indie scene and like self-published stuff. I think because you can just write what you want to write, and it's not like, oh, we can't have that because that would offend this group of people, or we would do that. And but yeah.
But that's a cool thing about what you're doing, though, Nikki, and the idea of independent artists sharing with each other, because the trying to make a living doing your art thing has been around since painting on cave walls. That's always been the problem, right? Regardless of what you do. But when indie artists support each other and tell each other about our work, I mean, there's a mutual acquaintance of ours, Thomas Marcantonio, and his book Ragged Wastrel Thing, which is such a cool Blade Runner meets Sin City kind of book. But you would never find that. I mean, first of all, it's almost impossible to categorize. But the other thing is
keep holding that up. I'm going to write that one down too as we go.
There you go. He's another one part of the Storgy verse. But you take a book like that, people are only going to hear about it from other people who read indie work. You're not going to hear about it from somewhere else. And so I think that's that's important. And so what we're doing here, as silly and fun as it is important.
Hopeful Monsters.
And that here, I'll take this. Sorry, Andreas, I'm taking it down so we can see it. That's beautiful, and that cover too. It's funny, and some people know this, some people don't. And I do slide it in there every now and then. When I first started doing this bookish stuff 5 years ago, I started out, I was on maternity leave with my youngest, and I thought, you know what? I could do this. And I started sharing my book box because I was getting Owl Crate. And Owl Crate is a YA, it's fantasy, contemporary, right? And I thought, I'm too old to read YA. And I had never read YA before. And then I was reading some of it and I thought this is pretty good. However, then I started reviewing for like HarperCollins Canada, Thomas Allen and Son Publishing. And again, it was mainly YA. It was fantasy, contemporary fantasy, maybe a little bit of sci-fi in here. And eventually I started to get bored, dry of it, because it was the same type of characters, same type of storyline, just maybe a different outcome. So it was a cookie cutter to what it sat next to on the shelf. And it was actually Jason from Jason's Weird Reads. I used to watch him all the time because he had these fantastic books that he was recommending that I had never heard of. And I said, I've tried horror. I've tried sci-fi. I've tried like any type of dark fiction. And it's never really captivated me. And he's like, well, you just got to find your genre. There's a subgenre within subgenre within subgenre. And that's where I fell into the indie world and the small press world. And I started really dabbling in all the different subgenres within horror. And I thought, no, I read it all. I don't necessarily share it on my channel, but I read nonfiction. One of my all-time favorite nonfictions is a book called Unthinkable. It's about the 9 most extraordinary brains in the world. I absolutely love it. So I read all of this stuff on the side. I read historical fiction, everything. But a majority of my review reads are dark fiction, sci-fi, maybe some dark fantasy, right? So that's what I share most of the time. But really, I mean, the indie world, small press world is for anyone.
And what she's trying to say
is buy Wayne's book.
Yes, and she was going to say the first among those.
Buy everyone's book. Yeah. Everyone, absolutely. Read these authors, read their work, dive into the indie world, dive into the small press world, because you will not regret it at all. Absolutely.
The problem is, though, that how do you find that stuff, right? And so I was trying to explain this to somebody who was publishing her first book and, was like, well, how do you get it? I said, think of Amazon as an actual physical bookstore. And there are 100,000 books that get added to those shelves every year. Now you're walking into that store, go ahead, find a book. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, unless there is a way for people to hear about this stuff.
It's true. Yeah. No, it's very true. You make a really good point. That would make for like a whole entire live show. Just talking. It's funny, and I've had people ask me, well, how do I find these authors? I'm like, you know what? I have Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. You just come across them. You just start meeting one person. And once you meet Ross, then I get to meet Wayne, right? Once I meet Eric, I meet all of his friends.
Ross is the Kevin Bacon of the indie horror world. Everybody is 6 degrees of Ross Jeffery. So
6 degrees separation. Yeah. Well, I've done it for Storgy for so long that, I always shout about authors, and like for me, like we get to read, like we read Wayne's work. I don't know like how long ago it was now, but like read his first piece and we were just like, this guy's got it. Like, let's keep reading him, let's publish it. Like if it comes in again, and when it comes in, normally like one of us is looking at the kind of submissions that come in. But whenever we get something from like Wayne, it's that it gets sent to all of us to read, and we're just like, oh yeah, another one from Wayne and stuff like that. But there's so many authors out there that we've either discovered and published their first thing through Storgy, or they've come to us and we've published a bit, and then they've gone off and done something and come back and got a book. And like I think there's 3 books that 4. There's one coming out soon as well that are people that we've published their first story or one of their earlier stories. And then we've contacted them and said, we love your work. Would we, have you got anything else? And they've said, yeah, we've got it. And then we're like, okay, brilliant, we'll publish it. We've obviously checked it's good first, but like that's something that we live for and we love doing is just promoting writers that either get overlooked by other kind of indie presses, or they don't feel that they deserve to have this yet because they're just up and coming. But like Thomas Mark Antonio, like this Ragged Wastrel thing, like his short fiction's brilliant, and I've shared a couple of like anthologies with him and stuff. And when he came to us and said, oh, I've got a book, so we were like, okay, and we read the book, and we were like, yeah, it's a great book, but it's probably like the book he sent us was big, and we were like, actually, we think you could probably expand this into like a trilogy. So you've glossed over certain bits that we would really like to look at. And then he went away and just rewrote it, had the bare bones for the whole thing, but then he's made 3 books. So the second one of that's coming out soon. But yeah, it's amazing. Like, he's such a talented writer. And to think that he's unpublished, it's just crazy. Like, there's so much talent out there that just needs someone to spot it and just push them in the right direction. And that's kind of what I do now and have done then is to, I see a book and I shout about it. Eric LaRocca's book that's doing massive. I think I was one of the first people to put a review out for it, and I was just like, this book's gonna blow up. And then he put a tweet out yesterday saying that he's almost sold like 20,000 copies for an independent book. I was like, bloody hell.
It makes me mad. It makes me mad as a reviewer, as a supporter of the indie and small press world. It makes me mad to see so much talent out there, that's just kind of drifting by, or it's not getting enough notice. But it's like a doctor to patients. There's so many publishing companies out there, but there's so many authors out there, right? Or writers out there, and so it's hard to get everyone published. And I wish that there was like some type of like magic capability to be able to start a publishing company and just publish everyone and have everyone covered and everyone happy and deserving of what they need to have. Absolutely.
I think as well, I think people also need to kind of like not lose sight of the fact that I think a lot of people think that being a self-published writer, you're not a writer, and people need to lose that kind of mentality, because you are a writer. You've written a book, and it might not be out in a massive publisher, but you've written a book and it's out there. And like with Juniper and Tome, like I published those myself, got them out myself. Tome went on to like be nominated for a Stoker, and both of them are on the Splatterpunk Awards this year. But then also, an indie publisher has now approached me with Stygian Sky Media to like republish them. And that's kind of unheard of. Like, you don't see like an indie book getting a re-release from a publisher. And then they also like have got the 3rd book when I eventually get around to writing it. But it's like, yeah, like I think a lot of people see the indie scene as, you've got a book out. Oh yeah, I've got a book out. Oh, did you publish it yourself? Yeah, I published it. Oh, okay. I don't need to look at that because it's not going to be good. But I think
a dirty word to so many people, and it just makes me want to shake my head and say, no, you're missing out. You're missing out. Don't think that way.
Because I think as well, there's, I love indie publishing. I love doing it all myself, and like, creating the book cover and talking to authors and getting blurbs, and like I love all of that stuff because I've done it for Storgy for so long. But like just having the hands-on approach and doing everything yourself, and then getting it out in the world, and then seeing it doing well is brilliant. And it's something I probably will never give up, even if I sign for a publisher next week. There would still be like a bit of me that would want to release something myself every year or something like that.
But it would be nice to be able to run that experiment, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. So anybody,
give me a nice big contract, and I'll let you know how they.
Yeah,
so I think Josh Malerman does it as well. Like Josh Malerman will do an indie book, and then he'll do like a book with his publisher, like his big publisher, like Del Rey, and then he'll do like an indie book again, and then he'll do Del Rey, and then like Del Rey might pick up, like they have recently with his book Pearl, which was called On This the Day of the Pig before. Like Del Rey have picked that one up after a few years to then re-release it, and it's like, oh, okay, that's quite a cool model to look at. Like one for them, one for me, type of thing. Yeah, it works well. But yeah, sorry, I took over.
No, it's very true. I've seen a lot of authors that have done the self-publishing type of thing, indie author, and then they've dove into trying out that experiment, going with a publisher, whether they're small press or a larger press, and had a really bad experience, and then pulled away, and then gone back to just indie. And
between fiction and nonfiction, I've done 14 books, and I've worked with big publishers, fairly big publishers, and I've worked with small publishers, and I've done it myself, and they all have their charms and their issues, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
When Long Distance Teammate came out, we wrote it and completed it just before the pandemic. Well, it's about working remotely, right? You would think they would want to hurry it out. It was a year from submitting the final manuscript till the time it hit the street. And that's with us pushing and saying, hey, time is of the essence, and how do you not want to make money on this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
On the other hand, it's beautifully edited. It's got a great audio book. It's a real book, right? When I hold it up to people, they're impressed because it's from a real publisher. And so, and that's great. On the other hand, I look at Akra's Bastard and Akra's Orphan, the Lucas stories, and I did those myself. And I was able to get them out in the world really quickly and like that. But one of the reasons I took Johnny to a publisher, I took it to Black Rose, is because I'm not a proofreader. And, and I'm not a cover designer. And I love when somebody says, this doesn't really work. I like working with editors because I cannot be trusted, essentially, is the problem.
It's true. It's true.
I cannot be trusted to do things on my own. Count of the Sahara, originally, my original title, I thought was incredibly artsy. Pith helmets in the snow.
Oh, that's got a ring to it, that one, Wayne.
Doesn't it, though? Doesn't that just set? No. and Eric at the book folks just went, no.
Well, it's very.
And he was absolutely right. I'm just saying.
You have to find what's right for you. Exactly. And it could be that doing one yourself and publishing it yourself and then going to a publisher back and forth, there may be certain things that you've written that's going to work with the small press, certain things that you've written that's going to work with a larger press, some things you have to release on your own. Absolutely.
Is time of the essence? Is it so specific and personal that, a larger publisher isn't going to care about it? Is it the big story that everybody can buy into? I mean, there are different. I get very zen about the whole thing. It comes with age.
Priscilla's got a question for you here, Wayne. She would like to know, how does the fiction writing process differ from the nonfiction writing process?
Oh, Lord. What does she mean by process or process, depending on which side of the border you live on? My wife continually makes fun of me for going to the produce section of the supermarket. It's different in this way. With my nonfiction stuff, because it's all business oriented, for I don't literally know how many years, I've been writing almost 1,000 words a week for the blog. And so in my nonfiction, I get real linear about what am I going to write about. I break it down into topics and then subtopics, and then I just bang out that particular subtopic or whatever. And so I can write in very discrete chunks because it's very planned out and linear. And I just write. If I write enough blog posts, I have a book. It's kind of how that works with the type of stuff that we do. And so it's a very different process. I plan my novels as well, but not nearly as intensely. And my brain doesn't categorize quite as simply with the nonfiction. But the nonfiction I find much easier to do. Much less fun, but easier.
It's not fun at all? Not even just a smidge?
It's a little bit. I'll tell you what's nice is, we've sold 30,000 something copies of Long Distance Leader and, copies of Johnny Lycan. So there's, it's nice to have people actually read your stuff.
All right, people, we need to change this, including myself. All right, you heard it here. Let's
Johnny
bump that
Lycan.
number.
If it helps, Ross's name is on the back cover of the book.
It is. I
Bump
blurbed
it
it.
if it helps.
It's very, very good. Everyone should be reading Wayne. I don't know why no one's reading Wayne. Come on.
You know, it's funny. Ross will do a video, and he's one of the authors that's out there that's also promoting and supporting other authors and reviewing their
Absolutely.
books on YouTube. And I'm just like, just the second, 30 seconds into his video, maybe even 2 seconds into his video, I'm like, okay, all right, where's my pen? Where's my paper? All right, on the list it goes. On the list it goes. And then sometimes I'm searching, and if it's got an audiobook, I'm down. I've already purchased it because then I know I can dive into it a lot sooner. I'm a person that can't say no to anyone. I want to support everyone, but it's also why my reviewing list is almost hitting 150 books now. So, which is not fair to the authors, because then it takes me forever to get to the books and to read them. However, I will. If I say I'm going to do it, I will. It just, who knows when it's going to happen. But it's why I can't say no. And when I'm hearing somebody else promote another author, they're on my list. And I will eventually at some point go and start searching through their stuff. I got to meet Wayne through Ross, right? As soon as I started to get to know Wayne, found out a little bit more about him, found out that he was originally from here. You know, he's one of my fellow Canadians. I started.
And she will be back. She warned us this would happen. A lesser man would take that personally, but
Wayne, this is your spot now to tell us a joke.
no, oh heavens, no!
Oh, come on, Wayne. You
No.
Oh,
Ta-da!
Oh, we thought you'd never get here.
I was about to get Wayne to tell a joke, and you came back.
Okay, so a grasshopper.
I'm not here.
So a grasshopper walks into a bar, and the bartender says, "Hey, we have a drink named after you." And the grasshopper says, "You have a drink named Irving?"
Okay, but that one's really good. I'm gonna have to steal that one.
It's not plagiarism; it's an homage.
Homage.
Anyhow, sorry guys. I apologize. I don't like that it does that, but it is what it is, right? I thought StreamYard would have had that fixed by now, but apparently not.
Maybe it's StreamYard's way of going, guys.
Well, that's originally what I thought it was, because I know if you're using the free version, I think you only have like 20 hours each month for it. So at first I thought, oh no, maybe I'm like getting too close to that 20 hours. And I thought, there's no way. I haven't done that many. I do have a question here for Ross. What inspired the infamous bedroom sequence in the Bram Stoker nominated tome?
Oh dear. Do you know? I don't know.
The sweat.
Like, yeah, that one. I don't know. That scene in particular. I said on another podcast that I was like I was at home alone. My wife was away with my children, and it was raining and it was dark and it was horrible. And particularly with Tome, I set myself. I had a big pinboard with kind of what I needed to write, and I just needed to write a scene that was in his house, and I needed something to happen. And I was sitting on my bed, which I don't normally do when I'm writing. I'm normally here at my desk, and I was kind of just looking around, and then a car had gone, like driven towards our house because we live on a close, and a light had kind of, I don't know how, but it appeared on the ceiling like a round circle, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a good idea. But I won't spoil anything that happens, but that's kind of where it came from. And then I just sat there and I was just writing, and I don't remember actually writing any of the words that came out. And then, like, I finished the chapter, and then I kind of, I normally when I finish a chapter, I go back and read it just as soon as I've finished. And I just sat there and read it, and I scared myself. I was petrified. I couldn't get to sleep. And then I kind of forgot about that scene. And then, you know, a lot of people that have read it, like Brad Proctor, said it was absolutely disgusting, and like he was horrified, and yeah, it was just strange. Like I don't really know where it came. It just seemed to download from my brain onto the page without me having to think about it. Like I didn't know what was going to happen in that chapter. And then there are a few copies that got out because I did release it. I think Brad might have the copy that got out because I hadn't. My wife normally reads all my work, so she'll read it. But I was in for some reason I was in a rush to get this book out, like in October, and that's the date I set. And I sent it out, and then she read it after it had gone out. And then, so she edited a bit of that bit. Well, not didn't edit it. She kind of like read it and was like, "Do you need that bit in there?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess I could take it out." So I think Brad got the director's cut. So there are a few. So they might even be valuable. Who knows? But
how do I get one of those?
Yeah, I don't know. Have to speak to Brad. But yeah, but there's another scene in the book that I didn't think was very scary at all. But well, I can see it could be seen as scary. But it's the scene when Fleming's in his car and he's just parked at the side of the road, and then something is in the road. And lots of people have said that was like really adrenaline fueled, kind of edge of your seat horror. And I was just like, oh, okay. Like I didn't. It's strange, like what scenes people pick out. That
you never know what is going to resonate with people.
Exactly.
There's another scene in it as well where I can't talk about it too much because it's a spoiler. But later on, you got Henry Crumb is in his cell, and then a particular person comes to see him, and someone sent me a message out of the blue and was just like, that scene in particular is the most horrific thing I've ever read. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't think it was that bad. So I said, why do you think it? And she said that because something was happening whilst another character just allowed it to happen and just ignored what was going on. And she just said that was the most horrific thing I've read in the whole book. And I was just like, oh, okay, cool.
You just never know. In the second Acra's Orphans, I have gotten the most grief because I killed off a character who wasn't even a human character. And I have caught more grief.
So you should.
Then, there were people dying left, center, and right in the middle of the Crusades, and people were like openly weeping over this one scene. And you just never know. It goes back to my stand-up days, and I know we're running really, really long, Nikki.
No, that's okay.
I remember watching a comic named Carl LeBove, American comic. He was up, and filthy act, just really filthy, and it did sex and drugs and rock and roll. And he's funny and he's doing his thing and everybody's digging it. And I'm going, wow, he's getting away with some pretty edgy stuff. And then he did this very simple bit about being a grown man being afraid of a bee. And this woman in the front row lost it. And he was like, wait a minute. I just talked about drug-fueled necrophilia and all kinds of things. And you were okay with that, but you're freaking out over my being scared of a bee. And it turned out that like 2 months ago, her brother had died from a bee sting. And it wasn't fun, and it's not funny. Mm-hmm. And you just don't know. You don't know what people are going to like. Right? I have people come up, oh, I love that story. I love that scene in the story where you did such and such. And it takes you a minute to remember what scene are they talking about, right? It's just kind of something that you threw away, but that resonated with them. Or this particular thing. I mean, the thing about horror is I think there is a huge relationship between horror and humor in that what scares you is uniquely yours.
Yeah.
What makes you laugh is uniquely yours. When people say, oh, this is the funniest thing you've ever read, almost inevitably it's not.
Yeah.
Right? I might find it funny. I might find it mildly amusing. I might not get it. What they're really saying is this is the funniest thing I've ever read. Mm-hmm. And the three things that do that are horror, humor, and pornography. But we'll just talk about
bringing it down, Wayne.
It's very true.
Bringing it down.
It's very true.
Just saying.
It's very
but
true.
It either turns you on or it doesn't. It resonates with you or it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. No, it's very true. And it could even be, I know lots of people are mood readers. I'm not a mood reader, but it could be, I could already had a few moments that day that, something bothered me or spooked me a little bit. And then I sit down and I try to read some type of paranormal ghost story. And something that wouldn't normally ever scare me, all of a sudden I'm on the roof. you know, and I can't come down from it. It could be just things that have happened that day and you're in a different mood in that moment that you're picking that book up. It could be something that just resonates with you, or a scene that you pick up. Like there's one scene that in here, I'll have to tell Ross later, that I can't get over, not in a bad way, but it's like the one that really stood out for me, one of the, you know, the most powerful scenes for me, right? I won't say what it is because I don't want to give away any spoilers, but it's true. It's neat to see what people pick up on, and I think that's why I love watching reviews so much, because you sit back and somebody says something, and you're like, oh, you know, I never even thought of that, or oh, they have such a good point, or yeah, I love that scene too. I didn't take it that way. You know, like I see exactly what they're saying. It's so neat to see other people's thoughts on what they've read. Absolutely.
All I know is don't read Juniper on the day you take your cat to get fixed.
Yeah.
I've got friends that will not read or do not want to read a book where a dog is killed. That's a huge no-no. You can do whatever you want to humans. You can put them through a meat grinder. You can, whatever you want to do, but just do not kill a dog. If you kill a dog, they don't want to read it. And I'm like, aw.
Well, yeah, better stay away from Juniper then. But it's funny because like with Juniper, I get people that message me regularly, like private message me and just say, like, you're evil for what you did to that cat. And I was like, the fact that you're saying
really do it.
No, I was like, the fact you're saying that, I don't even care, like, because you haven't got it. But anyway, I won't spoil that for anyone.
Yeah. What were you going to say there, Wayne?
I was just going to say, you know, if you hit them where they lived, they've read it. You've got their money. Sucks to be them.
Yeah.
You know, it's I read a piece by Stephen King, and I enjoyed it, but there was parts of it that will never leave me. And I sat back, and it was actually my mother. I was having a conversation with my mother, and she says, well, what did you think of it? You know, it's one of her favorite books by him. And we were sitting back, and I was like, you know, this scene and this scene and this thing, like, really bothered me. Like, it really got under my skin. And it brought up that emotion. And she said,
what was it?
I don't know if I should say, I could tell you the book, but I don't know if I should say the scenes, because I don't know. I mean, it's,
what
I'm
book
sure
is it?
It was it.
Okay, yeah.
It was it. There were so many scenes in it that really got under my skin. Not like I hate the book because of it or anything like that, right? It was just like things that will resonate with me and that brought out emotion that will always be there. And she said, well, it sounds to me like Stephen King did his job. Did you have emotions? Are you ever going to forget that book? Are those going to always stay with you? And I said, absolutely. And she said, well, he did his job. You bought the book, you read it, and it's always going to be on your mind. So
yeah, sign of a good writer.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, you know, I always say negative reviews sell. I don't know how many times I've seen a negative review and I thought, you know what, that book still sounds right up my alley. Yeah. I've gone and picked it up and I've absolutely loved it compared to what everything else that I was seeing, right? So I don't even pay attention too close to, you know, ratings or negative verses. If it sounds interesting, I want to try it. I want to see what I think of it because I may absolutely love it, right?
I think I read Duncan Ralston's Womb. Big, like I was looking at it anyway to purchase, and then I kind of like looked at like the reviews, and there were so many like really bad reviews, and I was looking at the reviews and they're like, oh, don't read this because of this and don't read this because of that, and I was like, that's exactly why I'm going to read it. Like,
exactly.
one of my favorite horror movies is terrible late 70s Steven Cronenberg movie called The Brood. And there, if you've ever seen the movie, there is the scene with Deborah Carr, or Samantha Eggar. Sorry, there's the scene, and anybody who's seen the movie knows the scene. And the world is divided between people who think that scene ruined the movie, and those of us who think that's the whole reason to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's true. It's true.
But it's what we said earlier. One person's trigger warning is another person's advertisement.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I actually said in my review of Juniper that I thought something was wrong with me because I was able to eat a snack while I read this.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me. I was reading. I'm like,
Well, you're an unfeeling, horrible person with no gag reflex. What's your problem?
Exactly. Wayne, you have me pinned. You know me so well. But I just think I'm just, like Ross said, not much scares you and not much bothers you anymore when you read so much of it, and it's where my heart lies, I guess, and it just doesn't bother me the same as some people. Some of my favorite reads are slashers, where it's just a mass murderer going around and brutally killing people. So
nice relaxing book.
Yeah, gotta do a little plug here for Cameron Robique with his 80 slasher books, right? So, but then sometimes those are the books. Wayne, what did you call them?
Jelly beans?
Yes, jelly beans. Those are my jelly beans because it's got a storyline. It's got characters that you love. It's got the
tropes.
Read.
It's got the tropes. It gives you what you want. You're craving something in that moment, and you get it. That's the thing is, I kind of divide my reading. There's what I consider, literature, the Mark Halperins of the world, who writes so brilliantly that it makes me angry. Right. And then there's the kind of silly stuff with the authors that I interview on my blog, who are all indie, largely, urban fantasy or historical fiction authors. And, I bang through their stuff. I enjoy it, but it doesn't stick with me forever.
Yes, LJ, I agree with you. Yeah,
but LJ Doherty, Beast of the Caliber Lodge, is a bubblegum book, or bubblegum. What do we say? Jelly beans. That's it. Sorry, jelly beans. Not bubblegum.
Yeah.
That is brilliant.
Call it any type of candy now.
Yeah, it's the candy apple sour thing. But anyway, like his book, was amazing. I didn't know what it was when he sent it to me to read, and for me, it was I'd said it's a balmy Crichton-esque type thing with Nazis and Sasquatch, and it's just one of those books you pick up, and that's kind of like Anubis Disc as well. You pick it up, you don't know what you're getting, and then you're like, oh yeah, this is good. Werewolf Detective. And
you need those. In between. I know. I just actually purchased House of Leaves, and it should be here on Monday. And I haven't read it before, and I know everyone that I've spoken to that has read it said it is a dense read.
Yeah.
It's a dense read. It is a good read, but it's a dense read. And I'm thinking, okay, so it's going to be one of the reads that I'm going to need those jelly beans in between to be able to consume and really enjoy and run through.
Exactly.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. LJ is one. Cameron Robique is another one. He's got those 80 slasher books, and you pick it up, and even though if it may be 350 pages, it's boom, done. You could even do it in one sitting because it's just, there's so much going on and blood and gore, and you're just captivated. And then you're done, and you're like, oh, now I need more.
Yeah, I've got House of Leaves, and I've had it for probably about 10 years. But it's just sat there, and I've never picked it up. And it looks amazing, but it's just one of those books where I'm like, oh, it's going to take a lot of time.
Well, you know what? Maybe I'll have to poke you because I've got a few people that have picked it up that want to read it, including myself. And we've kind of said that maybe we should plan a buddy read, but over a long period of time, give it a couple months kind of thing, right? We've got another question. Do you guys have time for another question? Wayne, I know you got
one more. Yeah.
One more. You've got some fun birthday celebrations. You guys will have to let them go soon because it's Wayne's birthday today. If you haven't said happy birthday yet, and he's got some fun book. He's got some fun things.
The best present you can give me.
Yes. I will. Right after we get off, I will go and do that. I'm going to have to go and decide which one, though. But they would like to know if you're a plotter or pantser.
You go, Wayne. Go
on. I used to think I was this great pantser, and I guess because of the way that I write my nonfiction, to answer the question they asked earlier, I've become much more of a plotter. What I do is when I, especially with a novel, is I kind of know where the main beats are. I know where I start and I know where I end. Thank you, Priscilla. I know where I start and I know where I end. And then I break it up into chunks. I kind of break it up into 3-chapter chunks. So I only need to pants from here to plot from here to here. Right. And then I'll fill that in. And it may take me somewhere that I didn't expect. But then I can start at the next point, and that's the next 3 chapters. And I so I do an overall arch. I know where I'm starting and I know where I'm ending. But what it looks like, in between and how it winds its way through is another story altogether.
And I do a mixture of the both. So, for instance, with kind of my short fiction, I normally just have just a few notes about what I want to write, and then I just go off and just write whatever comes into my head. But with Juniper, I planned it, like seriously planned it, because I was like, this is the biggest thing I've written. I don't want to get lost. I don't want to kind of spend months writing it and then realize I've got nothing at the end. And that worked really well. And it was just a different way of working, and I've never did it before. But then from that, I went straight on into writing Tome, which is like probably, I don't know, 4 times the size of Juniper. And then I was kind of like, I need to really focus, because it was the second book, and I was just like, yeah, so that's the difference. And like, yeah, I had a huge pinboard. I just use Microsoft Word. I don't use any of these like flashy,
Me too.
computer-based things that like follow threads and all that. I don't do that. And yeah, I just had a big pinboard with kind of each chapter. So I normally work out roughly what chapters I'm going to do. So, you know, Tome, I think, is like 30 odd chapters. And I was like, okay, 30 odd chapters. I normally have like a kind of 5-act structure, 4-act structure. And then I just have like, my notes are like on the post-it that I have for chapter 1. It's like chapter 1, the character. I was like, right, I need to get to here. And then like chapter 2 would be, okay, this is this character. Something happens, and then I'll kind of just pants it in kind of whilst I'm writing. But I'll have a rough structure of kind of what I want to achieve. And then the rest of it just is me just vomiting onto the page and hoping it sticks.
That's what I say, puking on the page.
Yeah. And then
My short stories are page puke.
Yeah.
They normally like flash fiction as well. For me, I'm just like, boom, and just see if it works.
There.
If it doesn't work, then just chuck it out and start again.
Wait, I'm glad you held up one of your books, because I'm like, I'm feeling bad. I don't have any physical copies, and I'm just like, here's Ross.
Yes, Johnny Lycan and the Anubis disc. Look at that. A quote from Storgy Magazine right here.
Ooh.
And then look, Ross Jeffery, author of Juniper. I am just stapling myself to Ross's coattails.
And I will say that everybody should be picking it up, Wayne, because it is brilliant. And I'm not just saying that. Like, also head over to Storgy and read Wayne's stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, like last week, I was talking to somebody about your flash fiction sponging.
Yeah.
And because they were talking about horses and stuff, and I said, "Oh, I tell you what, you need to go and read this on this website." And they were like, "What's it about?" And I was like, "Sponging." And then I explained kind of what it was, and they were like, "That sounds brilliant. I'm going to go and read it." And I was like, "Oh." Wayne is brilliant. Read more Wayne.
Oh, shucks.
And before we go, because we're going to let Wayne go to his birthday celebrations, what a way to celebrate his birthday today than going and picking up some of his work. Just saying, best birthday present in the world. I know I will go do sell it myself. I have to go in and put all our description stuff in first. But then while I'm on the computer, I might as well just go and start searching. And we did have another birthday. Ross did also celebrate his birthday this month on the 14th. So you could always go and do a belated birthday gift and go and buy his work if you haven't.
Indeed.
Right?
I think that's the only one you can currently get at the minute. But and Milk Kisses and other stories. But
well, like I said, I'm about a third of the way through Only the Stains. So
very exciting.
You're enjoying it, Wayne?
I am. Enjoying it is an interesting term.
Enduring.
It's, it's like, please, by all means, rip my guts open and pour lemon juice in the wound. But please, sir, may I have another?
I love that.
That's a quote and a half. I'm going to use it.
Yes, absolutely. I may have to steal that, Wayne, when I do a review at some point, but I'll make sure I poke you first. And I'll give you all the credit for that one, because that was brilliant. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and talking with me and just chatting and having a good time. Thank you to everyone that came on in the chat and hung out with us, or anybody that may be watching this after the fact. But we should let Wayne go and enjoy his day and his birthday festivities.
Yes, because I don't have many left.
He says that watch he's going to be like the first person to live to like 150 or 200. Or...
Oh, good Lord, no.
Johnny Lycan, 27.
Yeah, exactly. It may take me that long to get to 27 of them.
And I guess we should let Ross go back to his family and his kids and stuff too.
Well, that beer's got to be empty by now.
I'm on my second. It's a different one.
There you go. Oh, you came prepared. What have you got, like a fridge in the office?
This is not my first rodeo, Wayne.
He's ready to go. He's got his wine or his beer. Or, yeah, he's always.
Yeah.
He's always.
I must look like an alcoholic because every time you guys do this call, it is around about the time I drink. So I was just like, every time I've got a different drink, and
oh, who
I'm not
cares?
an alcoholic.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, even for us.
Yeah.
I mean, what does it matter?
Wayne's going to be on the town in a minute anyway.
That's
Indeed.
right. That's right. Well, have a drink for us too, Wayne, and Ross. You have a drink for Wayne, and yeah. Well, perfect.
Well, thank you so much for letting me play in your sandbox and let me riding Ross's coattails and all that good stuff. I'm just happy to be here, Coach.
Oh, it was so funny. It's so great. I'm happy I got to meet you through Ross. And anytime, you guys are always welcomed. Anytime, poke me. You have a new book coming out. You want to promote something? I mean, it's a small little corner of the internet, but anything helps, right?
Definitely. And
Absolutely.
yes, thank you very much, Nikki. Thank you for having me on again.
Absolutely. Well, perfect. Thank you, guys. See you guys later.
Bye-bye.
See ya.